Gretzinger. I was in Tunisia from 1964 to 66. I think we were the Tunisia 3 group or 4 probably. I was here in Ann Arbor that October night in 1960 and heard the candidate Kennedy speak on the steps of the Union. And 2 years later, no, it wasn't 2 years, it was 4 years later, I was signing up for the Peace Corps. I was a student at Berkeley at that time. I've been back to Tunisia only once. I went back to work there after I left the Peace Corps. I worked there again for 4 years, and then went back to visit in 1974, and that was the last time I was there. I miss the place. People tell me it hasn't changed, but I don't believe them. So I have really fond memories. I had a wonderful time in the Peace Corps. It changed my life.
George Entenman. I was in Tunisia from 1964 to 66, and again from 1971 to 72. And I was in the town of Gafsa, which is in the south of Tunisia. It's on an oasis. And the town was named Kapsa under the Romans. There's an oasis there. And I had a very good student, a girl student, because the classes were mixed in Tunisia. And her name was Algia, and she took me to her house once, where she lived in the oasis. And we went out into the oasis in the dirt roads and then walked off into this garden, or into the oasis, and came to a little area with 3 huts made of palm trees, palm fronds. And there were 3 little huts, and it was just brushed dirt that they, sort of floor for the whole place, a little compound. And there was a little man, a little thin man, wearing a red fez, sitting on the ground, reading a book. And that was her father. And he finally sort of looked up at me, and he took the book, and of course it was in Arabic, and he turned it to the front, which is the back of the book for us. He turned it like this, and then he looked and he pointed at me and he said, "Jane Eyre," and he was reading Jane Eyre in Arabic. And he was a wonderful man, and his daughter was a wonderful student, my best student. And I mean, after a year, we were just speaking only in English, and he trusted me with her. I could take her places, and we could do stuff with her and with other students, and it was just a fantastic experience. And he was a tough guy. When Bourguiba decided to socialize he started off with, I won't get into too long with this, but when he socialized the land, and he said to everybody in the oasis, "Leave, you'll become an employee for $1 a day." And he wouldn't leave. He stayed there. He was an employee on his own land until Bourguiba realized he was starting a revolution against himself and reversed it all. So he stayed there. But it was a wonderful place to be out in that oasis.
Okay. Great.
My name is Kerry Lehman. I was a volunteer in Tunisia from 1965 to 1967. I was a TEFL teacher, and I was stationed in Gabas.
My name is Ron Costalde. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Tunisia in 1965 to 1967, and I taught English in Tunis.
I'm Richard, or Rick van DeMoortel, now Sterling van DeMoortel. I was in Peace Corps Tunisia from 1965 to 68. I extended a year. And I was the first 2 years in Gafsa at the Lycée Mixte, and the third year in Sousse at the Lycée Jeune Fille, teaching ESL.
Okay, I'm Mimi Chapman. I was in Tunisia from 1972 to 74, and I was an English as a foreign language teacher in a lycée in a large city, Sfax. You know, we got there in the middle of the night. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning there, and we were really impressed that the Peace Corps country director was there with a couple of other people, and I thought there would be nobody there, and you know, it was the middle of the night. And yeah, and they put us up in a sports complex where they had dormitories. And then after that we had 3 different training spots in different parts of the country, mostly in hotels. I mean, it was pretty nice. But in towns, though, small towns, we got to talk to the children, because all the children would flock around us during breaks, and they would try to teach us Arabic, and thought we were really funny because we couldn't speak anything, we couldn't say anything, so they said we were like babies because we couldn't even count to 10, and they thought that was hysterically funny. So we had lots of children around. That was really nice. Locations, we were encouraged to just take off and take buses and trains around the country and see what the different towns were like, so that when it came to getting our assignment to school, if we had any choice, which I don't remember us having a lot of choice, but if we had any choice, we could at least have an idea of the part of the country we would prefer, or if there was a city that we really liked, or town that we really liked that we wanted to be in. So we had training in one town, and then we traveled, and then we had training again, and then we traveled, and then we had training again, and then we got our assignment. And then I remember one time they came down and got me because there was a cartoon on television, and it was in English, because they didn't bother to subtitle cartoons, so it would be a little short 2-minute Bugs Bunny cartoon or something like that, and they'd come rushing upstairs to get me. Come down, come down. Okay, and they'd be watching me. Is it funny? What are they saying? Tell me what they're saying. Translate what they're saying. You know, and they're just looking at me the whole time. You know, how can you translate a Bugs Bunny cartoon or Daffy Duck or something that's so ridiculous to start with? And they wanted me to laugh. You know, they said, "Is it funny?" They kept saying, "Is it funny? Is it funny?" Oh yes, it's very funny. But that was the only English I heard for 2 years. Kind of nice to sort of be off the hook for a couple of years and not have to be part of the frenetic American lifestyle, which seemed even more frenetic when I came back. It took me a long time to readjust. They had gone through this whole thing before we left Philadelphia, when we did our staging, about adjusting to culture shock when you get there. Well, there was no culture shock when we got there. We knew what we were getting into. It was not a surprise or anything like that. We knew we were going to be speaking French. We knew we were going to be teaching school. You know, none of that was a surprise. It wasn't a culture shock at all. We were ready for that. What I wasn't ready for was the culture shock coming back. And they didn't say anything about that.
Tell us about that.
And first of all, it was hard for me to speak English on a regular basis with everybody. It was hard for me to overhear everybody's conversation around me if I was on the bus or walking down the street, and I could understand what every single person was saying. Before, I could just kind of shut it out because I couldn't really understand most of what people were saying in Arabic. But now I felt like I had to be listening to everybody who was around me, even though they weren't speaking to me, because I could understand what everybody was saying, and everything was so big, and it was so bright, and it was so everything was so gaudy looking, and the stores were so full of stuff. It was appalling to me. It was really hard to come back to, because when, you know, in the little stores there, if you needed toothpaste, you went down and you went to where the toothpaste was, and you got the toothpaste. There was one kind of toothpaste. You wanted soap, that was the soap. There's the toothpaste. There's the dish soap. You know, there weren't hundreds of choices of things to choose from, and that was hard to get used to.
My name is Karl Stark, and the year I was in Tunisia from 1980 through 82. The village I was in was Shawat. Well, in Tunisia at the time they didn't have much refrigeration, and so you get meat once a week. And meat usually was chicken, and that was hauled by a chicken vendor. And he had a little bicycle with a little cage on the back, a little cage kind of trailer. And what he would do is for about 50 cents, he would kill and pluck the chicken for you. And I would always have him do that. The men in the village gave me a hard time about that. And then a couple weeks later, one of the men took me aside and said, you know what, we also pay him 50 cents to pluck the chickens. He said, nobody likes to do that.